At 30,000 feet, the cabin hummed with engines and secrets. On my birthday, the two people who should have seen me didn't. But a stranger in 14C noticed the quiet wish I kept to myself. And that's when the flight changed from routine to unforgettable. I remember the cold snap of New York air on the jet bridge, how it slid under my hoodie and made me pinch the strings tight. The plane waited like a silver promise, tail logo bright against a pearl grey morning. "Boarding Group C," the agent called, and we stepped forward. Mom scanning emails, Dad finishing a call that he ended with a quiet, "Yeah, we'll talk budget when I land." No one looked at me. No one said happy birthday. We found row 18 starboard side. I asked for the window and pressed my forehead to the cool acrylic. Down below, baggage handlers, reflective vests, practiced hands, tossed suitcases with the rhythm of a band I wasn't invited to join. A birthday hat, flat and cheap, was buried in my backpack between a math workbook and a half-eaten bag of pretzels. I'd brought it as a joke with myself. "You don't turn 13 every day." Mom leaned in. "Wi-Fi code is on the napkin card in the seat back." Dad slid his laptop into the pocket and adjusted his watch, like time might answer him. I waited, just a glance, a line, a spark, but their faces were already somewhere else. I pulled my hoodie up and let the window hold me. Taxi, brake, pause. The captain's voice was kind, with a Midwest smile. "Folks, we've got some light chop over Pennsylvania, otherwise a smooth ride to LAX. Flight attendants, cross-check." The aisle filled with final buckles and the rustle of plastic cups. A little kid across the aisle kicked the seat in front of him until his mother tapped his shoe. A college girl in 14C, messy bun, denim jacket, tapped out a text, then looked up. Our eyes met for a second. She smiled like, "You okay?" I gave the universal teen nod. "Fine." Takeoff pushed me into the cushion. New York fell backward, rivers stitching silver through the boroughs. I counted to 13 under my breath because no one else was counting with me. When the seatbelt sign pinged off, the aisle turned into a slow parade. Laptops, snacks, the quiet negotiation of armrests. Mom ordered a sparkling water. Dad asked for coffee, black. I got ginger ale and a bag of almonds I didn't want. The flight attendant, badge said Sam, paused when she handed me the can. "Anything else?" she asked, the way good people ask. "Do you have a candle?" I blurted, then felt my face go hot. "Never mind, it's dumb." "Candles and pressurized cabins have trust issues," Sam said, playing along. "But we've got tiny lights and big imaginations. Why do you ask?" "It's my birthday," I said too softly. She heard anyway. She always would. Sam's smile gentled. 13 looks good on you. Be right back." I watched her move up the aisle, the way attendants do. Sure-footed, graceful, reading lives in a glance. She paused at row 14, whispered to 14C, the denim jacket. They both looked back at me, not like I was a problem to solve, but a moment to hold. Mom scrolled. Dad typed. The world went on. Cloud tops rose like slow oceans. Somewhere over Jersey, the light turned the cabin honey gold. That's when 14C stood up, as if stretching. She held a napkin folded like a triangle, then another napkin that looked suspiciously like a paper crown. She coughed once, a gentle announcement, and in the quiet that lives between engine notes and strangers, she sang, just above a whisper, "Happy birthday to you." It was off-key and perfect. A man in 15A looked up from his sports page, then joined, baritone and warm. A couple in row 12 harmonized like they'd done it before. The aisle became a river of voices, uncertain at first, then braver, then something that felt like belonging. Sam reappeared with a plastic cup, holding a single red M&M perched on top of a brownie bite, a candle stand-in. She held it like a ritual. My parents froze, meeting each other's eyes, then mine, like the cabin lights had snapped on inside their chests. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, Dad's jaw unclenched all at once. The song gathered around us, and for the first time that morning I felt visible, like a dot on the map the pilot checks every minute. When the voices softened, Sam leaned down. "Make a wish," she said, and the whole aisle seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the clouds parted, laying out a silver road ahead. I didn't wish for fame or a new phone. I wished for eye contact, for 3 words, for the kind that anchored you in busy weather. I blew gently. The red M&M rolled and tapped the rim. Laughter, soft, tender, not at me, but for the moment. 14C lifted the paper crown, nodding permission. I put it on. It was ridiculous. It was everything. Mom reached for my hand. "Baby," she whispered, and it sounded like the start of a confession. Dad cleared his throat. "We should have..." He stopped. He didn't have the right words yet. Maybe I didn't either. But voices can be a bridge when language fails. We settled into the kind of silence that heals. Somewhere over Pennsylvania, the light chop arrived, and the plane shook like a reminder that even smooth flights have tremors. Sam winked as she passed. 14C returned to her seat but kept looking back now and then, like an older sister guarding a secret. I stared at the window again, but the glass felt warm now. Far below, a river braided through winter fields. I traced it with my finger. The cabin was just a long metal room full of strangers I might never see again. And yet they had found me. The day had found me, and in the row where my family sat, the space between us began to shrink, inch by inch, mile by mile, as the country opened itself beneath our wings. The moment the singing ended, the cabin seemed to exhale. Conversations picked up again, seatbelts clicked, and the hum of engines returned to its steady rhythm. But inside our row, something had shifted, subtle, like a string pulled loose in a sweater. Mom kept glancing at me as if searching for the right opening. Dad stared at the seatback screen, volume low, eyes unfocused. 13 had finally been acknowledged, but not by the people who were supposed to. Sam came back down the aisle with the trash bag. "How's the birthday boy holding up?" she asked softly. "I think I peaked somewhere over Pennsylvania," I joked, trying to sound older than I felt. She chuckled and squeezed my shoulder, the way people do when they're both proud and sorry for you at the same time. That's when the captain's voice cut through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're entering a zone of moderate turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." The seatbelt signs flashed on. A few passengers hurried back from the lavatory, grabbing headrests like climbing a moving staircase. The plane dipped once, sharply enough that my ginger ale sloshed onto the tray table. Mom instinctively grabbed my arm, the first physical contact between us all morning. "You okay?" she asked. It was automatic, but real. "Yeah," I said, even though my stomach had done a full somersault. The college girl in 14C twisted around. "First time flying during CHOP?" she asked over the seat. "No," I said. "First time flying on my birthday, though." She grinned. "Well, that explains the crown." I'd forgotten I was still wearing it. It tilted slightly with each bump, ridiculous and perfect. For the first time, Mom actually noticed it too. Her lips parted as if to say something, but then the plane jolted again, harder this time. A coffee cup up front hit the floor with a splash. "Cabin crew, take your seats," the captain instructed. Sam rushed to her jump seat and buckled in, but she caught my eye mid-stride and mouthed, "You're good." Somehow, that mattered more than it should have. Dad finally closed his laptop. "This is rougher than they said," he muttered. "It's just turbulence," Mom replied automatically, but there was a tremor in her voice. She wasn't afraid of flying. She was afraid of the quiet that turbulence forces on people. No distractions, just presence. As the plane shook and rattled like a stubborn cart on a cobblestone road, something unexpected happened. Mum reached across me to grab Dad's hand. He squeezed back. They both looked out the window, not at me, not yet, but at least they were looking together. For years, birthdays had meant distractions. Work, calls, rushed dinners. But up here, in the cold, thin air, there was nowhere to hide from the silences. The turbulence lasted 15 long minutes. 15 minutes of shared stillness, broken only by the overhead creaks and the occasional gasp when the plane dropped a few feet. When it finally eased, there was a strange kind of relief. Not the wild applause kind, just soft exhales and loosened shoulders. Mom turned to me. We didn't plan anything special for today," she said slowly. We thought the trip itself would be enough. I didn't know how to answer that, so I looked out the window instead. The sky was perfectly calm now, painted in endless blue. 14C leaned back toward me. "Hey, Turbulence Birthday Club. Not everyone gets that. Pretty exclusive," she said with a wink. I laughed, surprising myself with how natural it felt. Sam returned, walking down the aisle now that the seatbelt sign was off again. She carried a little notepad. "So," she said theatrically, crouching beside my row, "if you could make one birthday announcement over the PA, what would it be?" I stared at her, unsure if she was serious. I don't know. That I exist?" I said, half joking, half not. She grinned. "Noted." Then she actually walked up to the intercom. I didn't think she'd do it, but she did. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your flight attendant, Sam. We have a special passenger on board today. He braved turbulence like a champ and turned 13 somewhere above the clouds. If you see the kid in row 18 with the paper crown, feel free to give him a birthday wave." The cabin reacted like a spark on dry grass. Waves, claps, cheers, laughter, even a few happy birthdays shouted from different rows. It was chaos, warm and sincere. But the most surprising reaction came from my parents. Mom laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in months. Dad shook his head, but he was smiling too, the kind that softened his whole face. For the first time that day, I didn't need to make a wish. It was already happening. The cheer from the cabin lingered like the aftertaste of ginger ale. Sweet, fizzy, impossible to ignore. Passengers settled back, but the energy remained. Strangers nodded at me when they passed. A few even raised their cups in a silent toast. It was like being part of a family I didn't know I had. But inside row 18, silence returned. My parents were present, yes, but still hovering behind an invisible wall. The paper crown tilted again, and I caught my reflection in the window. A kid caught between childhood and something sharper, wishing for words that hadn't yet been spoken. Sam leaned by our row as she collected cups. "You're kind of famous now," she teased, her eyes kind. "Birthday kid, turbulence survivor, hero of row 18. Mom smiled politely at her, then looked at me with a hint of guilt. We didn't mean to forget," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Dad added quickly, "It's been a tough quarter, projects, deadlines. We thought we'd make it up to you in LA with something big." I turned to face them fully. "But you didn't even say it, not even once." My words came sharper than I expected, raw from somewhere deeper than 13 years could measure. The air in the row thickened. Mom blinked fast. Dad looked away. For a moment I thought they'd retreat again into the safe corners of their silence. But then 14C leaned over the seat. "Hey," she said gently, "sometimes parents get lost in their own turbulence. Doesn't mean they don't love you, just means they need reminding." It felt like a knife and a bandage in one sentence. Dad cleared his throat, his voice rough. "She's right. We failed today, but we see you now, and we're sorry." Mom reached for my hand. "Happy birthday, baby," she whispered. Simple, almost too late, but real. My chest tightened, not from pain this time, but release. The man in 15A, who'd joined the singing earlier, leaned across the aisle. "Kid," he said with a grin, "don't forget to tell this story someday. People need to hear when strangers step up. If you're watching this, what would you have done in that cabin? Would you have joined the singing or just watched? Tell me in the comments below." As the flight rolled on, the cabin dimmed for the movie. Passengers settled under thin blue blankets, screens glowing like floating lanterns. But in our row, light lingered. My parents didn't have all the answers, maybe never would. But in that thin air above the country, they'd finally given me 3 words I'd been waiting for. And yet, deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished. Something else waited ahead, something that would change not just my birthday, but the way I saw them forever. Somewhere over the Midwest, the cabin lights dimmed into a soft amber glow. People tucked into their movies, headphones in, shades half drawn. The plane hummed like a giant lullaby, but my heart was wide awake. The words my parents had finally spoken, "Happy Birthday," floated in the space between us like fragile glass ornaments, beautiful but breakable. I traced shapes on the fogged window with my finger, not really drawing anything, just waiting. That's when Dad closed his laptop completely, sliding it into his backpack with an unfamiliar finality. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like someone preparing to cross a bridge. "Listen," he began slowly. "I owe you more than a sorry." Mom turned toward me, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her voice joined his, quieter but steadier. "We both do." I shifted in my seat, unsure where this was going. Birthdays usually meant cake, not confessions. Dad inhaled sharply. "Last year, we promised each other that we'd slow down, be more present, but we didn't keep that promise. And today, we forgot the one day we should have remembered first." His words didn't sting. They sank, like heavy stones into a riverbed. Mom added, "I thought planning a surprise in LA would make up for everything, but that's not what birthdays are about. They're about you, right here, right now." The engines roared softly outside. A flight attendant passed, checking belts. No one else in the world existed in that moment but us three. I swallowed. "Why now?" I asked. "Why only after everyone else remembered?" They didn't rush to answer, and that made their silence feel honest. Finally, Dad said, "Because sometimes it takes strangers to remind us who we're supposed to be for the people we love." Mom reached into her tote and pulled out a small, squished envelope. "I was supposed to give you this at breakfast." She smoothed it out and handed it to me. Inside was a simple card with my name written in her handwriting, the same one she used on lunch notes when I was little. The message inside wasn't long. "We may get lost sometimes, but you're the reason we find our way back. Happy 13th, love Mom and Dad." Something in me cracked open, not in a loud way, but like a window slowly unlatched. I whispered, "Thanks." Dad leaned back, eyes on me. "We can't undo this morning, but we can make you a promise right here at 30,000 feet. No more missing the moments that matter. Not birthdays, not anything." I looked at them, really looked. They weren't perfect parents, but they were trying. Maybe that was enough for now. 14C leaned over the seat again, this time with a knowing smile. "Big family summit, huh?" "Something like that," I said, laughing softly. She pointed to the paper crown. "Keep that. It's proof the day turned around." And in that quiet sky, somewhere between who we'd been and who we might become, I believed them. The birthday wasn't about cake or presents or even the singing. It was about being seen. But none of us knew that one more surprise waited before we landed, and it would seal this day into our memories forever. The captain's voice broke the soft rhythm of the flight. "Folks, we've begun our initial descent into Los Angeles. Current temperature is a warm 78 degrees. We should be on the ground in about 25 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival." Shades lifted. Seatbacks clicked upright. The orange wash of sunset spilled through the windows, painting everything gold. It was that strange in-between moment on a flight. Not quite there, not quite gone. And yet, something inside me had already landed. I looked at Mom and Dad. They weren't on their devices. They weren't distracted. They were looking at me, really looking. A smile sat on Mom's face, soft and steady. Dad rested his hand on the armrest between us, not pushing, just there. Then came a sound that caught everyone by surprise. The intercom crackled, and Sam's cheerful voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we land, we have one last special announcement. Someone on board turned 13 today, and this flight won't end without a proper birthday send-off." The cabin erupted into murmurs and laughs. My ears burned. Sam continued, "So on the count of 3, let's give row 18 the kind of birthday cheer they'll never forget. 1, 2, 3. A wave of applause, whistles, and cheers burst through the plane. Passengers twisted in their seats to wave, clap, or shout "Happy Birthday" across the aisles. The college girl in 14C did a mock bow in my direction. Even the pilots turned on the seatbelt sign with perfect comedic timing, as if joining the celebration. My parents laughed, not the strained, polite kind, but full and real. Mom squeezed my hand. Dad leaned close and whispered, You're loved, kid. By us. By strangers. Never forget that. What about you? If you were on that flight, would you join the celebration or just smile quietly? I want to know. Tell me in the comments below. As the plane dipped through a layer of orange clouds, I thought back to the morning. The cold New York air, the ignored birthday, the silence between us. And now, this. A chorus of strangers. A crown made of napkins. A promise made mid-sky. The wheels touched down smoothly on the LAX runway. Applause rippled through the cabin, half for the landing, half for the moment. The sunset outside bathed the tarmac in a warm glow that made the whole airport look like it was applauding too. While we waited for the doors to open, 14C turned around one last time. "Hey," she said, pointing to my crown, "don't forget to keep that. It's proof that strangers can make a birthday unforgettable." I grinned. "I won't." Mom brushed a strand of hair from my face. "Next year," she said softly, "we start the day together." Dad added, "No excuses." For once, I believed them. Not because they were perfect, but because they'd shown up when it mattered most. As we walked off the plane into the warm California air, I carried my backpack, my silly crown, and something invisible but powerful. The certainty that I was seen, loved, and part of something bigger than just our row. Some birthdays have cake, some have candles, and some have entire airplanes singing your name above the clouds.